Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining me for the compliance and archive storage session. I'm sure you have had a very long day, and my goal is to make this topic as interesting as possible. I'll just tell you a quick joke. I was walking down the line. I was like, wow, there are so many people coming to the compliance archiving session, but it was actually the next room. But I have to give you lots of support and proud in that you're joining this session, because as much as compliance may seem, I'll say not as interesting as IoT and all that, it is a very big part of any enterprise IT. It's a necessity that if we don't do it right, if we don't archive your data in durable, secure manner, some of you may get into trouble. So my goal today is to show you how Amazon customers are using our storage services to implement their compliance and archiving solutions, as well as how our solutions can help you make that as easy as possible. So my name is Henry Zhang. I'm the product manager for Amazon Glacier, our cold storage solution. So not a surprise that I'm sharing this with you. So just to set the quick background, when we talk about storage, Amazon Web Services already offer a very wide portfolio of storage services. So just from a functional perspective, from the left to the right, you see file systems that we offer, which is EFS. Then we offer block storage, which maps to your SANs that you operate locally. And then we also have object storage, which is S3 and Glacier. So in addition to the broad array of storage portfolio, those infrastructure services, we also try to stitch together these services with a number of data transfer solutions. So at the bottom, you can see 6 data transfer solutions which help customers move data in and out of AWS. So I will highlight a couple of those. So for today, I'm going to focus on the object storage components, which is really how you can use S3 and Glacier to implement a compliance and archival storage solution. So let me start with a couple of customer examples, because those are always very exciting. When we think about compliance storage and archiving, we have customers in many industries that have this need to keep their data reliably for many, many years. I personally work with many customers in media entertainment, in healthcare, in financial services, in oil and gas, and government. So I see a wide array of archiving needs, archiving solutions. So let me tell you a couple that I've worked with. So if you play music, if you play guitar, I'm sure you know SoundCloud, which is a very popular social sort of like audio platform. If I play a guitar lick, I can upload it to SoundCloud. I can share it with my friends. I can ask my friends to comment on that and tell me, hey, this measure needs a little tweaking. So what SoundCloud does is it stores your original uploads, which is high resolution in Glacier. It archives the data, and it never deletes that. And then it transcodes the raw file into a lower resolution proxy when your friends hear it. And they store that in S3. So from S3 and Glacier, they're combined. They are keeping all of the musical assets that the customers have uploaded in the last couple of years, and that's already multiple petabytes. So I have another media archive customer, which I'm very excited to share with you. This is Sony DADC. It's Sony's new media services division. Sony just launched a press release yesterday highlighting their all-in solution on AWS, which is their new media distribution backbone and OTT service. This is called Venue, with a dot in the middle. This is a platform that helps small, medium-sized studios and broadcasters process their videos, archive their videos, deliver their videos. And one key component is all of these media creative professionals want to retain all of their creative assets for eternity. Lots of media customers call that the crown jewels of their creation. So they really want this data to be reliably stored over decades. And so Sony chose AWS, and they are already migrating multiple petabytes of traditional storage platforms, data stored on traditional storage platforms onto AWS Cloud. So in the healthcare space, we work very closely with Philips Healthcare. This is the Philips Healthcare division in US. So they support, I think, 1,500 hospitals. They back up their medical imaging data, patient records onto AWS. Again, those are the records that must be retained under compliance objectives. And typically, the retention window is multiple years, sometimes decades, after the patient's lifespan. So Philips is able to take advantage of AWS storage services. In addition, they also use a number of HIPAA-eligible storage services on AWS to implement this entire solution. And they're keeping the data for a very, very long time. So finally, for those of you who may work for public sector, I'm very excited to share that King County, which is the largest county in the broader Seattle area, which is where I'm from, and also the Amazon headquarters, King County has moved from a tape-based archival solution to Amazon Glacier over the last couple of years. For over 17 agencies, they've deployed this transition. And not only were they able to meet their compliance requirements, they were also able to save $1 million in the first year by switching from a tape-based solution to an Amazon-based archival solution. So from all of these examples, I think one thing I learned over the last couple of years is compliance and archive storage needs are really, really growing. There was this picture that we used to show, which is an iceberg. You can see the tip, right? A lot of customers look at the hot data as the tip of the iceberg, but there's this bigger body of the iceberg which is submerged under the water that you can't see. But that is the type of archival or compliance data that customers wants to keep. Sometimes it's a little daunting because we don't really know how much that volume is. And I've worked with customers who are storing petabytes, multiple double-digit petabytes, up to hundreds of petabytes of data. And we see that across multiple industries. For example, in media entertainment, all the cameras are getting higher resolution. We're going from 4K to 8K and ultra high resolution. In healthcare, we also see the X-ray machines are evolving. Images are getting bigger. Now I need to store more data for more customers. Financial services, a bunch of new regulations were stipulated over the last couple of years. Now, not only do you have to retain financial transaction records, you also have to retain voicemails, and some of the social media data even have to be retained. So you look at all these sectors of different types of business, one pattern emerges, which is archiving is, if anything, more important than any time before. And it puts a lot of pressure on the IT owners, if you are one of the IT owners for your firm, to look for a solution that is cost-effective, that is durable, that can scale and sustain the growth of your business. Think about your business growing tenfold in the next couple of years. How much will the amount of archiving data grow? And what is your solution for that? So I talked to a lot of customers, and they tell me that they use a number of traditional solutions today that span from traditional disk-based systems to tape-based systems, also including offsite tape vaulting that they use for lower cost storage. Those have worked in the past, but one of the headaches that they always feel is they have to refresh the platform. They have to maintain the hardware. They have to plan for capacity. The best example I can give you is for tape customers, every 2 to 3 years, they have to refresh their tapes. So there's this LTO technology that you have to typically go from LTO 3 to 5. So every 2, 3 years, I'm doing this background migration, which is really not that exciting. All I'm doing is making sure that data is written to the new platform. Now I can take advantage of the newer tapes, which have higher density. But honestly, it's a thankless job. If you do it right, you don't really get a pat on the back. But if you don't do it right, you lose some data, then the business is at risk. So a lot of customers said, hey, what if I could get rid of doing these I'll say pretty low value add tasks and focus on being more creative and driving more business values? How can I do that? So that's when a lot of customers started looking at AWS for their compliance storage. A couple of the advantages that customers really appreciate is, number one, when you use any type of AWS storage services, we charge you by the amount of data that you store on a daily basis. This is significantly more flexible than, for example, having to buy a storage array upfront or a tape library with lots of tape capacity upfront. So we're looking at customers switching from millions of dollars of CapEx investment every few years to spending, starting with thousands of dollars every month, right? And being able to archive that data with a much more reliable solution. In addition, a lot of customers come to us and say, hey, I have compliance objectives, for example, for data sovereignty. We have German customers that says, my business archives cannot leave the country. So we say, hey, OK, great, we have a solution for you. AWS has 12 regions worldwide, and one of them is in Germany. So we also have a region specifically designed for the US government. So any type of compliance data that you need to store, you can pick a region that's the best fits your compliance objectives. So let me dig into a little bit more about the solutions that we provide for you. So I want to highlight a couple of things. Number one is the storage tiers across S3 and Glacier. And number two is how you can use them in tandem, which is our data lifecycle capability. So first off, we offer 3 types of storage options, object storage options for you to store compliance archiving data. From the left-hand side, you see this is S3 standard. It's our 10-year-old service, very mature. It's had a lot of success with many different types of customers. S3 standard is typically designed for an active storage. For example, you're doing lots of advertising, bidding, lots of ticket selling, lots of hot transaction systems that needs to use an object storage system. It scales very, very quickly, and it has high throughput. So that's the hot storage on the left-hand side. On the right-hand side, you see Amazon Glacier. This is our offering in the very cold storage space. So the best way to think about Glacier is this is, at least I hope this is your tape replacement. So Glacier is our code archive storage. There is a latency to getting at your data, which is about 3 to 5 hours. And it's really designed for long-term archival. And in between, we have this warm storage, which is the S3 standard infrequent access. This is really designed for pictures that you typically don't look at frequently, but maybe once a year, once a month. These very infrequent data retrieval cases. So comparing these two, we look at, OK, how active is the data? And also, how quickly can I get at the data? And the last thing is obviously price. From S3 standard, we charge, the price starts at 3 cents per gigabyte per month. And then Glacier is about a quarter of that cost. So for compliance storage, most of our customers today use a combination of S3 standard infrequent access as well as Glacier. They use S3 for the active storage, and then they use the lifecycle capability to tier into the colder tiers. I'll show you that in a minute. So just to dig in a little bit about the 2 compliance storage offerings, S3 infrequent access and Glacier. S3 infrequent access actually delivers the same durability and throughput as S3 standard. So there's no latency in terms of getting to the data. It's instantaneous. What is different is that it's designed for infrequent access data so that we price it at 1.25 cents per gigabyte with the projection that you will not access this data more than once per month. So if you access your data once a month, you pay 1 cent. If you access the data twice a month, you pay 2 cents. So the math shows that if you need to access your data more than 1.5 times a month, you're probably better off using S3 standard instead of the infrequent access. And there's a very easy way to switch between the two so that hey, I have a subset of my archive, video archive, for example. I'm going to pull it out next month for some type of transcoding workload, and I need to read it multiple times. What you should do is change the storage class from S3IA to standard, and then use do as many reads as possible, as you want. Glacier, on the other hand, there's a 3 to 5 hour latency. Really think about this as your offsite tape library that today takes about a day or two to fetch, right? So Glacier is actually faster. 3 to 5 hours, you can get the data online, and then you can attach compute services to look at that data set. Glacier offers the same durability as S3 and S3IA, 11 nines of durability. And it's really suitable for archiving. So I'll tell you a story which a lot of customers find very useful in terms of understanding the 11 nines of durability. So for most of you, if you use a tape solution or drive-based archival solution, you typically think about numbers of copies. And a lot of media customers we work with think about numbers of copies. So when we first told them S3 Glacier offer 11 numbers of nines, they're like, how do I think about that? It's a really large number. It's great. But how do I think about that? So at one time, we worked with a large studio in Hollywood who are very, very stringent on their data durability requirements. And they told us that they store archive video footage on 2 copies of tape. So then we shared with them that, how we derived the 11 nines of durability. We said we have an internal simulation, which is called a Markov chain failure model. We simulate the device failure, we simulate network failure, we simulate server failure, we even simulate building failures, data center failures. And then with all those simulations in place, we calculate an 11 nines of durability for S3 and Glacier. So then we asked the architect at this very large studio to say, hey, for your 2 copies of tape, what is your projected durability if you use a similar Markov chain model? So a couple of days back, he came back and said, for my 2 copies of tape on the same site, I estimate the durability to be 4 nines. For my 2 copies of tape that's stored in 2 separate buildings, let's say 20, 30 miles away, but both in LA, he projects that to be about 5 nines. So that was the moment when he realized that Glacier and S3 are actually 6 to 7 orders of magnitude more durable than a traditional tape-based archival solution. That was an aha moment, because for us, that was the first moment we really bridged number of copies in local traditional solutions to 11 numbers of nines. So feel free to share that story with your customers or your business partners. So we mentioned this lifecycle capability, which is designed to help customers stitch together these 3 tiers. We want customers to use the 3 storage offerings in tandem. And there's a really easy way that customers find super useful. So in terms of the capabilities, you can easily transition data from standard to standard IA, let's say after 30 days. And then you can also transition from standard IA to Amazon Glacier. You can also directly transition from S3 standard to Amazon Glacier. So a great example is pictures. Think about the pictures you take on your phone, or the video clips that you take, right? Day 1, you will probably look at it. You will share it with your friends. In the next week, it probably gets a little colder. Maybe you'll share it once in the next week. But after 30 days, you probably never look at the videos or the pictures that you take until maybe a year after. So the graph below really shows the data access frequency for most type of content. It really drops over time. So customers find using lifecycle to manage this data transition with time super easy. By easy, I mean you can really set it up with a couple of clicks in the S3 console. So let me just walk you through this really quickly. So this is my video bucket. I create a policy. There's no code needed. You just go to the console. First, I set a transition policy from standard, S3 standard, to infrequent access after 30 days for my video assets. Next, I set an additional transition policy from S3 IA to Glacier after 365 days. So what this means is in the first year, I have instant access to my video assets. I can do anything I want, right? And data will just come back right away. But after a year, I really want to start saving cost. That's why I push the data to Glacier. And I don't expect to need to retrieve that data very frequently. And for those of you who like to see code or like to program, I'm sure we have a lot of customers who like to do that. The lifecycle policy is actually very self-explanatory. This is the policy that maps to the 30-day and 1-year transition that I just showed you. The segment here is for a 30-day standard to IA transition. And the segment below is the IA to Glacier transition. Very self-explanatory. So customers find the lifecycle policy really useful for helping them lower their storage costs. Just to give you an example, for 1 petabyte of video storage, if you store it in S3 Standard, which is hot storage, it'll cost you $31,000 per month. After you archive it to Standard IA, you see a 58% savings compared from Standard. And then if you move from S3 IA to Glacier, you can realize another 44% savings in monthly storage cost. So that's pretty phenomenal. A lot of customers love that. And what they do is they really think about how can I use the portfolio together for my long-term archiving. They kind of map out 1 week, 1 month, 1 year, and multiple year as sort of like these gates. And then they devise transition rules based on these typical business patterns. So something you can use. And for those of you who already manage compliance archival data with traditional solutions like backup software, we have a number of solutions that already integrate with S3 and Glacier natively. So I'll just highlight one example here, which is Commvault, a very close partner with AWS. Their Simpana solution, which is enterprise-grade backup solution, has native Glacier and S3 integration. So you can just point, it's really a point to S3 Glacier as storage destinations, and then you can start tiering data from your Isilon, from your NAS, from your SAN, all the way into the cloud, and leverage the lifecycle policy in the cloud to manage the tiering. So having shown you the storage portfolio and the lifecycle capabilities, I want to highlight a couple of use cases, because for compliance and archiving, it's really about the solutions that you want to use. So let's start with regulatory retention. Are there any compliance officers in here today? OK, maybe not. So for regulatory retention, I think 2 years ago, I talked to a lot of financial customers. And they said, we buy a lot of warm drives, like write once, read many times drives. Those are very expensive. Those are typically EMC Centera or SnapBlock from NetApp. Those are purpose-built compliance storage solutions. And their objective is to retain the financial transaction records, investor communications for up to 7 years. That's a very established industry, very established rule. So they came to us and said, hey, how can we do this better, right? We don't want to buy very expensive compliance solutions. Can you guys offer us something? Glacier is already at that price point. It already does the durability that we're looking for. Can you make that better? So last July, we launched a capability in Glacier called Vault Lock. This is really a compliance storage solution that is very easy to use. So what that does is you can set a lockable policy on the Glacier storage containers, which is a vault. And you can do a number of things. For example, you can do a time-based retention, such as for financial records, retain everything for at least 7 years. What that means is no one can delete those records or mutate these records. Or you can use Vault Lock for other types of compliance controls, such as on read access controls. If you are a pharmaceutical company and you have a secret formula for the best-selling drug, one thing you can do is deploy a multi-factor authentication rule that requires a 3-way unlock to access this formula. Right? So there are a number of compliance controls you can devise, whether it's regulatory or not. You can use Vault Lock to create these policies and enforce it. The enforcement happens on the entire storage container for Vault. So think about the 7-year rule, right? I will have one container for all the records that needs to be retained for 7 years. And then I may have another container for the records that needs to be retained for 3 years, for example. That's how we kind of think about that. And lastly, the policy is powerful because it's immutable. And that is the strong governance that regulatory customers are looking for. This is very similar to the warm storage. The data cannot be mutated or deleted. And then we ensure that by providing you an immutable policy, which governs that. So just digging into that a little bit, with Vault Lock, you already get the non-overwrite non-erasable records, which is comparable to the worm storage that you can buy on the market. We also offer a time-based retention, which is, in records retention case, it's a control code. And our control code is archive age in days. This helps you determine how long an archive needs to be retained before it can be deleted. So I already mentioned that policy lockdown is a very strong enforcement for governance. The policy cannot be mutated. And then we also help customers deploy legal holds with a vault level tag, right? So this is also very common for regulated industries. If your business or your business partners in a lawsuit, you have to hold a number of the records indefinitely, independent of how long the predefined, the regular retention window is. You just have to hold it until the case is, the investigation completes. So we also understand, a lot of customers told us that the compliance industry storage solutions are a very established industry, and there are certain ways of building that trust. And one of the things that we learned is, almost all the compliance storage solutions today have worked with a third party to issue a compliance assessment. And this is Cohasset Associates. They've been in the business for over 40 years, and they produce this paperwork for any type of compliance storage you buy, you have to show your compliance officer this third-party compliance assessment from Cohasset. That's been that's the way things have been done in the past few decades, and we adhere to that because that's how we understand customers want it, and that's how they can convince their compliance officers to make a move. So also last year we worked with Cohasset. And we achieved this third-party assessment on Glacier, which says now Glacier can be used for financial records storage that are pursuant to SEC Rule 17A-4F and commodities trading rules. So what this means is over 4,000 broker-dealers in the US are now able to use Glacier as an alternative compliance storage solution to retain their business transactions and investor communications. And they love that. So let me show you a couple of concrete examples about what a retention policy actually looks like. So the first one is very simple. It's a 1-year record retention. And what we do is we translate that business objective into a set of AWS control parameters. Number one is 1-year retention means that I will deny delete archive operation from anybody, including the root or the super user or the admin of your account, up to 1 year, right? And up to 1 year here really means until the archive has been stored for 1 year, no deletion or alteration is permitted. And the archive age here is computed based on the control code, which I mentioned, the archive age in days. So we turn that set of translation into a policy. As you can see, this is about 10 lines of code in the Glacier console. These 10 lines express this 1-year retention policy. Very, very simple. You see that the effect here is deny. The principal here is the users that I'm issuing this command on. This is star, which is all the users. And the action that I'm denying is delete archive on a resource which is my Glacier, my business critical vault, and the condition being archive age in days less than or equal to 1 year. Very self-explanatory. So customers really like this because they can now do a screenshot of this policy, send it to their compliance officer or the auditor and say, hey, I'm doing this with Glacier, and this is what the policy looks like. It's one screenshot, and they can really tell the story. Just a little bit on the how we help you sort of test this irreversible process. As I mentioned, vault lock is something that you cannot unlock. Once you lock a vault and say all the contents in here needs to be retained for 7 years, you cannot change that policy. This is a good thing because that gives us a strong governance, but also we are cognizant that some customers don't get it right in the first time. So what we do is we want to give you this realistic, high-fidelity test environment as if the vault has been locked. But at the same time, you can change your mind until you feel you're really ready. So that's why we have a two-step locking process. For those of you that work with databases, this is very similar to a transaction, begin transaction commit model. So I'll quickly walk you through that. So you will first initiate a vault lock. That is when you come up with a compliance policy. For example, the 1-year retention policy. You provide the policy to the service, and then we'll deploy the policy, and it takes effect right away. But at that time, the policy can still be removed using the abort vault lock operation. So in this initial phase, which we call in progress, you can do high fidelity testing because the policy is already in place. So this is when customers test deleting archives that's being retained for, say, less than the designed time, or deleting the vault completely. Those should all fail. If they are happy, then they should go forward with locking down the vault. If they're not happy, they can unwind this operation with abort command, and also reissue the policy, make tweaks until you're happy. So customers found that really useful because you really want to get this right and have confidence that it'll do the right governance. So another example is customers using vault lock capabilities to do legal holds. This, again, is very similar to the 1-year retention, except that we will hold the contents as long as this legal hold tag is on. So we support this by letting customer define a vault level tag for legal hold. And by default, you'll set the value to false. When you do have to deploy a legal hold, you'll turn this value from false to true, and then the hold now is in effect. So let me show you what that looks like in a policy. Again, very few lines of code. Everything else is the same as the 1-year retention. The effect is denied, the principal is everybody. The vault is still the same, is my business critical vault. The only change is the condition, which is now stating that as long as the legal hold control code is true, all the records will be retained independent of what the underlying expiration date is. So in this case, if I have one record that expired yesterday and the legal hold is on, without the legal hold, I could delete that record because it's exited this retention period. With the legal hold on, I will not be able to delete that. So let me quickly walk you through how you can deploy a vault lock in the console in under 3 minutes. So this is the Glacier console. I'm going to do this demo on this demo vault. Click the demo vault. You see a set of tabs for the vault configuration. We want to focus on the vault lock configuration tab. You click on that. You see that the vault is not locked. The lock status is not there. And then we click on this create vault lock policy. So we provide a UI that helps you devise a vault lock policy without you having to write any code. This is probably very helpful for folks that don't want to program. So again, this is similar to what I shared just now. You're denying everybody from the delete archive operation. And then at the bottom, this is where we define the condition of the 1-year retention. I create a condition, add a permission. Now you'll see this policy, which is identical to what I showed you just now. Now I initiate the vault lock. And then at that stage, we provide you a lock ID. This is something that we give you for safety reasons. We need this lock ID to commit the lock process. And we don't want customers to accidentally lock vaults by mistake. So I will store this lock ID in a safe place. I'll click Done. Go back to the console. Now it shows the vault lock is in progress state. This is the phase where you can do some testing, try some deletes. They should all fail. If you're not happy with a policy, you can click on the delete vault lock and rewind, rinse and repeat. If you're happy, you can go ahead and complete the vault lock. So I'm happy with the policy. I click on complete vault lock. This is where I need to provide the lock ID. If you lose the lock ID, it's no big deal. You can unwind the policy and do that again. All we are doing here is to ensure that you don't lock something down by accident. And now I click Complete Vault Lock, and now you're done. So here, the vault has been locked. A couple of things to call out. One is you don't see the Delete Vault Lock button anymore. Right? This is a irreversible operation. Second is that you see the policy that's deployed in this little table below, denying everybody from deleting archives for up to a year. So in addition to records retention, a bunch of other compliance objectives are also very, very important, namely auditing and alerts. So for auditing, customers find it very useful to turn on the Cloud Trail capability for AWS. This is a platform-wide capability that once you turn on will help you log activities, API activities from all of the services. And for Glacier and S3, we both support logging of APIs. So the logs are delivered to you in an S3 bucket that you devise. And the customer either parse the logs themselves, or they use some type of third-party tools, some partner tools, to analyze the logs, draw insights, or produce reports. There are a number of flexible ways to doing that. One thing to call out is that for Glacier, we support all type of API calls, so which is the container-level APIs, creating a vault, deleting a vault, as well as the record-level APIs, deleting an archive or uploading an archive. For S3, it's a little different. We support the container-level logging, but the object-level activities are actually supported by what we call event notification, which is more instantaneous. I'll show you how that is done in a minute. So with the ability to look at what has happened using audit logs, right, it is just as important to control what should and shouldn't happen. From a compliance and archiving perspective, a lot of customers find one capability for S3 and Glacier very useful, which is the access policy. There are many ways to managing security on storage, and this is one of the ways that you can really focus on devising one policy on a storage container that manages all of the users. There are ways to manage each user individually with their own policy, but this is really helpful if you have a small set of containers that are for archiving purposes that you really want to designate specific controls across all of your users. So what this lets you do is you can do things like, I have a policy for my marketing vault that has restrictions on any delete operations. No one can delete content in this vault. Whereas my DevOps vault have read-write permissions from these 3 guys only. Right? Anytime you hire someone new into the DevOps team, all you need to do is tweak that one policy instead of having to go through multiple policies and managing the security controls. Another thing that the customers found useful is that with this access policy, you can very easily designate third-party controls. So for compliance operations, one of the objectives is for financial services, you have to designate a third party that always has access to your regulatory data. This is because if a bank goes bankrupt or is in an investigation, if they're not cooperative, we need to have business continuity so that someone, for example, the SEC, can always have access to that regulatory data for the investigation. So using the access policy, it's very easy to set up a designated third party for this type of access. So let's talk about event notification. This is the part where your auditing for S3 actions can be very interactive. Event notification really does 3 things. Whenever somebody puts data or deletes data into an S3 bucket, you can hook it up to a SNS topic, SQSQ message, or a Lambda function. So it's really designed for a lot of interactive computation on storage based on events that are triggered. A lot of media customers use event notification for transcoding. For example, I have a bucket. Anytime a raw video file is dropped into this bucket, I'll kick off a Lambda job that will kick off a transcoding job with Elemental transcoder, for example. And then once that is done, drop that into a proxy folder that now I can use for delivery. For compliance and archiving purposes, we really use this event notification for the object change alerts. This is when you want to get real-time notification on who, for example, copied a very critical asset to a different location, right? Who is trying to delete some of the records that needs to be retained. Even though we already protect your records from being deleted, it's still good to know that someone attempted it and why that happened. It's good to get that notification and then see if there are any holes that I need to bridge in my security policies. So these are the APIs that event notifications can get triggered on. At the high level, it's a set of put operations where you create content, as well as delete APIs, which remove the content. So the last use case I want to share is geographic redundancy. We've already talked about records retention. We talked about auditing, logging, alerts. This is another very important use case that customers found to be, there was a time where customers couldn't use AWS because we didn't offer an easy way to do geo-redundancy. There are certain customers that require data to be stored redundantly over 2 different locations that are at least 600 miles apart. A lot of those are government customers. A lot of those are utility and regulated customers. So last year, we came up with a solution which helps customers easily replicate data across region. AWS at that point already had 12 regions that could be used as different backup locations for customers who want to persist their data. And what we did is we provided this very easy mechanism that stitched together moving data from one location to the other. And a lot of customers now find that useful, not only for compliance, they also find that useful for distributing the content to multiple geolocations. For example, I want to scale my business. I want to have a copy of the same data in a different region. I can distribute. They find using the replication with S3 much easier than managing replication themselves. So a couple of quick callouts with cloud cross-region replication. First of all is the replication status is very transparent. You can query that using a head operation on each of the S3 object. This is a real-time operation. Second is that we replicate the access control from the source to the destination. This is also very important for compliance customers who said, I want the controls from region A to be persisted in region B because it's the same governance that I'm deploying across multiple replicated copies. In terms of cost, this is very similar to you copying data by yourself. The standard request, copy request, any data transfer charges apply. And lastly, delete operations are also replicated. So you can essentially use it for a very full-on replication scheme from one region to the other. So let me show you an example here. This is, so I've created 2 buckets. Bucket A on the left in one region in the US, and bucket B in a region in Tokyo. So I'm replicating my video files. So once you set up this replication from A to B, it's really simple. Now I will add a video into bucket A in the US region, and the content is automatically replicated to region B. No additional work required. The second use case, which customers are always super creative, is that they use a combination of cross-region replication as well as the lifecycle policy to deliver compliance across geolocations as well as achieving a low cost. So here they've set up replication between 2 buckets across 2 regions. What they also do is tier the destination bucket from S3 standard into Glacier. So now they get geo-replicated data sets. They get tiering into Glacier on the destination bucket for lower cost. Some customers even tier, after they replicate this data, they tier the source bucket into Glacier as well, so that they get ultra low cost for a compliance solution across 2 geolocations. So something to use for the future. So last but not least, I hope I've shown you a number of solutions that can help you deploy compliance solutions on AWS for data archiving. Now the question is, okay, I have terabytes or petabytes of compliance storage. I want to move into S3 and Glacier. How do I do that? So I'm happy to tell you that as of today, we already offer 6 types of data transfer solutions, and we made enhancements to 2 of them today. Number 1 is we released a new version of Snowball, which is bigger. It's now 80 terabytes. So you can move petabytes of data very quickly using this physical device called Snowball. If you haven't seen that, please go to our booth. There's a real Snowball that has traveled around the world at least once. It has some mileage on it. It'd be great to take a look at it. It's a physical device that we have released. Super exciting. And now we also offer Snowball in a number of worldwide regions. The second one is an enhancement to S3 data transfer, which we call the S3 data transfer acceleration. This can deliver up to 300% faster data transmission over the wire. So with the combination of these 2, you now have multiple options. For a one-time data ingest, when you do not want to upgrade your network, Snowball could be your go-to solution. If you already ingest data over the wire, if you have a distributed fashion, sort of like data ingest, say from many mobile locations, from multiple branch offices, the S3 transfer accelerator can be your choice to deliver data into the cloud faster. So for those of you, just want to highlight, for those of you who don't know about Snowball, it's a physical device that now has 80 terabytes of data with a 10 gigabit network with a very rugged case that ships on its own. So you're looking at the Snowball, in its own shipping case. There's no, packaging needed. The label is an e-ink label with a Kindle, and it's intelligent. It knows where it should go. And we encrypt all of your data end to end, so that if someone steals your Snowball, your data will remain secure. And some quick math here. With the 80 terabyte release, you're looking at the ability to use a Snowball for 10 days for as low as $250 plus shipping. What that means is you can use 13 80 terabyte Snowball devices and transfer a petabyte of data within a week. So that's super exciting. A lot of customers have already moved their data center, storage, have migrated off of the data center into AWS, and I encourage you to take a look at all of these solutions. So with that, I have a couple minutes for questions. Great, gentleman over here.
So what if you use a vault lock and then you don't pay your Amazon bill? Are you able to prepay them 7 years of storage?
That's a great question. Question is, if I use vault lock and lock my data for 7 years and I don't pay the bill, is there a way to prepay the bill? So today we do not require a prepayment. What we do ensure is that even if you don't pay the data, we still lock your data. But then it'll be a one-off process to figure out what do you want to do with this data after it exits the retention window. We do not require prepayment. This is again very similar to the pay-as-you-go model. But from a budgeting perspective, you are looking at a prepayment for the next 7 years. And just to highlight, if we drop price, the new price affects say a couple years down the road as well. Great. Question? Gentleman in the middle?
So the locking mechanism that you guys showed with the console,
Yeah.
is that headless optional as well?
Sorry?
Is it headless so you can do it programmatically versus?
Great question. So question is, can I use Vault Lock in the console as well as using APIs? Yes. All of the Vault Lock operations are supported by APIs. We already have third-party partners building solutions with these APIs. I showed the console because most customers find this to be a fire and forget operation, right? It's like I do this for once for 7 years. That's why I want to just show you how easy it is to do in the console. But all APIs are supported. Great question. Question is, how do I search the archives? For example, all the files related to a drug formula, things like that. So right now, we do not provide a very rich search capability. For Glacier specifically, we provide a code inventory, which lists all of the asset address. And then you can have the file name or some comment as a archive description, but we don't provide a search capability today. What customers do is that they would build an external database for search purposes. For example, a lot of customers store data in Glacier for archive compliance storage, and then they build an index using DynamoDB. Which will show, hey, here are the tags for this archive. Here's the file name. Here are some of the metadata. Some go as far as crawl the full text index before they archive the original content into Glacier. So what you get is, you want the search capability to happen on a more instant access, like database solution like DynamoDB, but separate the archival storage piece onto Glacier, which is really designed for low-cost storage. And had we designed the search capability within Glacier, then the price is going to go up. Right? So we give customers and partners to build solutions, which is, here's a very low-cost compliance storage platform with Vault Lock. Here's the indexing that you can build with DynamoDB, with Aurora, with any third-party databases that you want to use. So that way we give customers the most flexibility. Great question. So the question is, we already support time-based retention. Do you also plan to support event-based, trigger-based solutions? So this is something we're looking at. Obviously, time-based retention was easier from go-to-market perspective, and also represented a larger piece from of what customers are doing today. So from what I learned, some of the interesting event-driven retention cases are a pharmaceutical company needs to retain everything for a drug, for production indefinitely, and then they get an expiration date confirmed by the FDA. So now they have to retain those records for another 7 years. Say that's the expiration date, right? Or an insurance policy, right? Retain it forever until the guy leaves, and now I change it into a time-based. We're looking at those. I think it's just those are a little bit more costly for us to implement, because what that means is we have to implement a role level or a record level sort of retention. With the time-based retention, we can do that at a vault level, which is much cheaper. We don't have to change the price, and then we can go to market faster, because the current compliance solution has no extra cost. So we're definitely looking at that, but not at the moment. We don't offer that. Thank you. Yeah, so the question is, do you offer a relock capability? Right? After 7 years, what do I do? So just one quick call out. The 7 years is a rolling thing, right? So yeah, so today we don't offer unlocking, right? Because if we did, then you lose this whole governance capability. And if you have records that exited the 7 year, what customers do today is, if they still want to retain that, they could copy that into a different location. And then you have the first bucket for 7 years. Anything that has exited, I will have a quarterly process that deletes them. A lot of financial companies do that because they want to minimize risk. If you don't want to delete them, then you can copy them into another vault if you now say, hey, now I just want to retain them for 90 days. So that's kind of the patterns that we see customers doing. We don't offer a relock, because that kind of defeats the purpose of the vault lock in the first place. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, wouldn't there be a price associated with making a copy of the data and putting another lock on it? The answer is yes, and we weighed that option against letting you unlock, right? And our thought was, if we let you unlock, then it's not a very strong enforcement. So because we don't let you unlock, there's really no relocking feature per se. And then the only option is to move this into a different location and change that. And honestly, like, copying data is not that expensive, right? Like, copying data is $50 for 1 million copies in Glacier. And then as long as you copy data within the region, there's no network transfer charge or anything. Any more question? I'll take one more. All right. Great. Well, thank you very much for your time.